What's up guys, my name is Andy and today I'd like to give you a quick start guide on setting up an accountant with access to the billing area of the AWS Console. So we're going to use AWS IAM for setting up a user group, a user and attaching the relevant policies. And I'll give you a rundown of what all of that means in the coming video. Let's get started. So for those of you who have never used AWS IAM before for managing users and identities, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the fundamentals. So this is your dashboard page. From here on the left hand side you'll see the sidebar. The three main things we're going to be worrying about today are users, groups and policies. If we click on to users, you'll see that I don't actually have any users at the moment, but a user will represent either a person like you or me, or it can also represent an application. So I can set up a user that only has programmatic access to the API, so an application wouldn't be granted access to the AWS portal, for instance. Next up we have user groups. Now user groups are a fantastic way of grouping users together and actually being able to update the permissions of a whole group of people without actually having to go into each individual user and change each individual user's permissions one by one. So for example, if you gave an entire department access to EC2 or something like that, if you also want to give them access to Lambda, you can do that to the whole group instead of having to go through each individual user within that group. The next thing we're going to look at is policies. Now policies, as the name suggests, are policies or permissions that we're going to grant to a user. The main policy that we're going to look at today is one that's already created by AWS, however you can create your own policies. The one we're going to be looking at today is called billing, and basically any users or groups that are given access to this policy will be able to access the billing area within the AWS console. So the first thing we're going to do is create a user group. To do that we just go into groups and then select create new group. We want to give our group a meaningful name so that we can reference it later, especially if you're going to grow your amount of groups. You want to make sure that you stick to a good naming convention from the beginning. So I normally follow the naming convention, something like accounts billing. So my naming convention is the department and then the access level. So if I was later going to create perhaps a user group for managers within the accounts team, then I might call it managers full access or something like that. But because the users in this group are only going to have access to billing, we're just going to call it accounts billing. When you're happy with your name, click next. And from here we're going to attach a policy to our group. Now we were talking about policies a little while ago, and if you remember I said we're only going to worry about one policy for the time being, which is billing. So I just do a search for it like that, tick the box, click next step. Easy as that, and the permissions behind that policy will be applied to our group. From here it's very easy, just click, this is the review page, we're happy, create group. So now on the groups page you can see the group that we've just created called accounts billing. We are now going to create a user to go inside that group. So on the left hand side here I'm going to click users, add user. I'm going to call the user accountant Bob, and here we specify the access type. If this was an application that was going to be accessing the API, then I'd tick programmatic access. But because this user is going to represent a real person, I'm going to tick AWS Management Console access. And this will mean that a real person can sign into the console and access the areas that we grant them access to. If we don't want them to access the API from this user, then there's no point ticking the box because it just opens up a possible security vector that there's no point opening up. So yeah, I'm going to leave auto-generated password. For the purpose of this tutorial, it's just going to create me a password and so on, which I can then feed back to the user. And I'm going to keep the box ticked, require password reset. This will mean that when the user logs in for the first time, they're going to have to set their own password. This is really good for security. So next, for permissions. Now from here you can either assign roles and permissions to the user directly. However, since this user can be placed into a group, we're going to place it into a group. So I tick the box for account billing. Easy as that. Next, for tags. We don't really worry about tags. Tags are optional. If you set up a large organization, then maybe you want to tag your users. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not too fussed about it. So I'm just going to go next for review. Everything is how I want it to be, and so I go create user. Fantastic, my user has now been created, and if I wanted to, I can see the password here. I don't mind showing you guys because I'm just going to delete this user once this tutorial has finished. So what you would normally do is you'd feed this information back to the user. You're given a URL that the user can use to sign into, so you'd feed them the URL, their username and password. Once you have done this, there is just one more step required to give users access to the billing area of your AWS account. So you need to go up here into My Account. Now I already have this open in a new tab, but scroll down a bit so you can't see some of my personal information. From here you need to go to IAM user and role access to billing information. You want to hit edit and make sure activate IAM access is enabled. If you don't tick this box, then users that you have created in IAM won't be able to access the billing area. So that should be all you need to do. The user should now be able to log in with the username and password, and yeah, it should be good to go. If you like the video, leave me a like. If you want to see more content, hit subscribe, and as always, have a good day.